All right, so we are now at part one of Sugar Hill, and in the second part of the prologue, they had flew into the mountains. They had flew into the mountains to get away from the earthquake. It was Ben, Marie, and Flambe or Sheffield, and they had to look for food and stuff like that, and they found food. And of course we learned that Marie's a girl, but Ben is probably a bit nicer than Flambe. Flambe is like, you know what, I really don't care. The ends justify the means for Flambe. I gotta do what I gotta do, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, my book is old. It's falling apart. Oof. Anyway, that's how I told you this book was old. It's from 1979. I love this book. So nice, so good. So chapter 1. By late afternoon, Sheffield, Ben, and Marie had crossed over one bridge and yet another mountain. The entire sky was vivid red, and the sun dangled overhead like a giant golden coin. The forest was still. The birds that had flown off in a frenzy of flight came back to roost in the trees. "We'd better be looking for a place to camp for the night," announced Sheffield. "What about dinner?" whined Marie. "I'm hungry." Where are we going anyway?" "Ben and I are headed for the other side of the island." "The other side?" groaned Marie. "And how far is that?" She sure seems a bit ungrateful to have just been rescued from death. Anyways, it's not too far from the way people are anyway. "I don't know, but it doesn't matter. We must make our way to Montego Bay," said Sheffield. "Why there?" asked Marie. "Because," Sheffield said gruffly, "that's where I want to go. You may go anywhere you wish. Perhaps you'd like to return to Port Royal. Marie turned to Ben, exasperated. "Are you going to Montego Bay too?" "I go where the captain goes," he replied. Marie's feet were blistered. She reached down and took her shoes off to carry them. The soles of her feet felt better as she made her way across the cool, soft carpet of moss. "We must be near water," she cried. "Oh, I'm thirsty again, Flambe. Can we stop for a drink?" He didn't answer her, but from the signs he knew they were heading into an inland rainforest. As they neared it, the air became filled with the scent of tropical flowers. They made their way past a giant eucalyptus tree and past a rocky formation snowy with honeysuckle. Now they were inside the rainforest. It was like entering a tall cathedral made of bamboo vines and flowers. Bird calls welcomed them. The thin shafts of remaining sunlight were their guides. "It's so beautiful," murmured Marie. She plucked a hibiscus from a bush and tucked it between her full, creamy breasts. She could hear the sound of rushing water. The moss beneath her feet became cooler and softer. She wiggled her toes in delight. "It's so beautiful here, almost holy." The two men had stopped. They were staring at something on their left. Marie, who had been lagging behind, joined them. "What's that?" she asked, looking at a fence. Bamboo holes laced together with strips of bark. Here and there along the fence were coconut shells carved into grotesque faces and decorated with bird feathers. The masks were guarding whatever lay beyond the fence. The three moved forward to get a better look. "Why, it's a native graveyard," said Sheffield. "Look at the masks," he said, pointing towards the coconuts. "Those represent their gods. They ward away evil spirits." They could now see that the fence ran in either direction and circled around to meet itself. Within the fence were row upon row of eroding tombstones, grinning like uneven teeth in the dark mouth. The stones were staggered at odd angles. The unkempt graves were covered with glistening iridescent moss. Stepping inside the fence, they saw that some of the graves were littered with burnt out candles and scraps of paper upon which were written voodoo prayers. Marie shuddered and moved closer to Ben. "Let's get out of here," she whispered. "Yes, Captain, I think we should," Ben said quickly. "There's no use in desecrating their ground." "Desecrate?" Sheffield laughed. "These are native graves, not those of Englishmen." He bent over, swept up a glittering item, and held it up for the others to see. "Gold," he said in an awe-filled voice. "It's real gold, probably stolen from some Englishman." "More likely from some Spaniard," added Ben. "Nonetheless, my lad, it's gold. Look at it. It's a bracelet of some sort. What do you make of that, Marie?" Marie trepidatiously examined the object. "Why does it look like a gold bracelet? Look at the design. It's a snake swallowing its own tail," she shuddered. "The eyes, they're red like tiny fires. They must be rubies." Could I touch it?" she asked. "Sure," said Sheffield, dropping it into the palm of her hand. "Wear it if you like." Marie, fearful of the graveyard but attracted to the gold, slipped it onto her wrist. It was the first time she had ever worn the precious metal. "Looks pretty, Marie," Ben remarked. "You might as well keep it. It's not going to do any of them any good." "Do you think it's all right, Flambe?" "I always think it's all right to keep gold," Sheffield roared with laughter. "Come on, let's get out of here." They moved on toward the sound of the rushing water. The stars began to come out, sparkling through the bamboo trees overhead. Floating like whispers on the wind, hundreds of fireflies flashed secret messages to one another. Marie's fear of the graveyard was left behind her. They came to a clearing, and a series of waterfalls, 5 in all, spilling down the sides of the mountain below, almost obscured by a light mist, was a pond. Mist floated out to greet them and wrapped around their legs like lizards, scurried beneath their feet to the safety of the rocks. "We'll camp here," said Sheffield. "Now Ben and I must go hunting for dinner." "What do you suppose we'll find around here, Captain?" "There might be some conies." Ben looked repulsed. "Conies? They're like rats." "Same family. I've had to eat them before. They're not bad if cooked proper." He glanced at Marie. "Marie, have you ever fished?" She shook her head. "Just as I figured." "Well, there's a small net in one of the bags. While we're gone, see if you can catch some fish in a pond and start up a fire." "Gone," stammered Marie. "You're going to leave me alone?" "You're hungry, aren't you?" he replied. "Don't worry, Marie," soothed Ben. "We're not going to leave you." His words were reassuring. And Marie began poking through the baskets, searching for flints and the net. As the two men made their way through the rainforest, Ben asked, "Where are we going to catch these conies, Captain?" "Best thing we can do is find a burrow, dig it out, poke around with the stick. When they come running out, smack them in the head with the rock." "Sounds a bit unlikely." "So starving." After a half hour of searching, they found a hole in the side of a hillock that Sheffield said belonged to a coney. Using the machete, he chopped off a length of the bamboo, knelt, and began poking. "Don't try to catch them with your bare hands, Ben. They've got sharp teeth. They could take a finger." "Don't worry, I won't," replied Ben, picking up a large flat rock shaped like a paddle. There were squeals inside the hole, and a coney, roughly a foot long, fat and covered with brown fur, came squealing out. Ben swung with the rock and broke its back. The animal lay twitching in pain as Ben hit it again on the forehead. "I've got it," he said, not too happily. "Stay put, Ben. There may be more inside." This is gross. "He's bound to have a wife." Rats get married. Just then another streaked out. Ben managed to hit it in the head, dazing it. He hit it several more times, and the animal was dead. These ought to be enough, particularly if that woman has managed to catch any fish. Right. I don't think she caught any fish, said Sheffield. He gathered up the rodents by their tails and started back in the direction of the impromptu campsite. "You don't like Marie much, do you, Captain?" "I don't like her or dislike her," he replied simply. "Like I said, she's just a piece." How many guys actually feel that way about girls? About pretty girls? Anyways, I suppose so. But she seems to be nicer than most of the whores I've met. Don't you think? Heck, Ben, all of them are nice when you want your money. "How much did she charge you?" Ben's face flushed. "I don't remember," he lied. He did remember. It was half a crown each time. He also remembered her soft, round body and the fragrance of her flesh. He remembered that she seemed to be excited by him, and at the time he didn't believe it was just an act. How many girls be acting? Anyways, she didn't lay there counting the minutes as so many of them whores did. And she was tight too. Oh, so very tight. Almost like a young bride would be. But he said nothing to Sheffield. Judging from the man's attitude, it hadn't been the same with him. But Ben was wrong. Sheffield also recalled Marie's fiery love-making, with her impassioned pleas for him not to stop. The biting, the scratching, the wild sexual acts. She was good, very good. But after all, she was a whore, and whores don't deserve to be remembered. Her shredded skirt tucked into her waistband, Marie swept the net through the waters and cursed. She had no trouble getting the fire started. It burned steadily in the center of the clearing, giving off a bright red. But fishing with the net was another matter. She was afraid to move too far from the edge of the water for fear of plunging into the deep water. She pulled in the net when she caught sight of a handful of fish shining in the moonlight, and tossed it across the water, then tugged at its end. The fish were small and escaped through the large weave of the net. Catch anything? Yelped Ben from the edge of the clearing. Marie looked up, relieved. No, darn it. But I did manage to get a fire going. Well, we caught some conies. Plenty of meat here. Still, if you like me to try. Oh, yes, please do. At least I've cooked fish before. You go catch some fish. Then, Ben, I'll clean these conies. Ben ran towards the edge of the pond, took off his boots, and slipped into the water. Ah, it's a bit chilly. You get used to it, replied Marie. Here's the net. I hope you have better luck than me. Their hands touched as she handed it to him. Sensations flowed throughout their bodies toward one another. Ben smiled as Marie lowered her eyes. Observing them from afar, Sheffield cut off the heads of the conies, slit open their stomachs, and cleaned them. With the tip of the small sharp knife he had found in the hut, he began to skin them methodically. He called out to Marie without looking. Marie, the fire needs tending. Don't let it die out. Try to find some guava leaves and some peppercorns. They're good for seasoning. She looked at him and said saucily, tossing her curls. You like to give orders, don't you, Flambe? Sheffield shrugged his shoulders. When you're a captain on the high seas, you don't adjust easily to becoming a cabin boy on dry land. Now move. Disgruntled, Marie wandered into the forest to gather dry twigs, guava leaves, and peppercorns, as well as limes. And peppercorns, she put everything into her outer skirt and trod back to the clearing. On her way, she plucked several white growths from the side of the soapwood tree. She would bathe later, using the fleshy fungus as her soap. Soap grows on the side of a tree called soapwood tree. The things you learn from reading. Ben had succeeded in catching 6 medium-sized fish and was busy cleaning them when Marie returned. She spread out her forest finds on the moss and refueled the fire by feeding it the dry twigs. Using 3 bamboo poles, Sheffield constructed a makeshift spit. He rubbed the flesh of the conies with crushed guava leaves, made slits in the fat, and poked the peppercorns inside. When he spread the bamboo shaft through them and put them on the spit to cook, then he spread the bamboo shaft through them and put them on the spit to cook. The fish seasoned with lime juice, they found limes, were arranged on a thin, flat rock, which was then put on top of the coals. The smell of cooking food permeated the air and reminded the 3 people of their hunger. No one spoke. They all sat watching the fire, each entrenched in thought. The sputtering flames reminded Ben of the horror he had seen in Port Royal. Marie thought of her tiny home that was no more, and Sheffield wondered how many sunsets it would take to reach the other side of the island. Ben was determined to shake himself out of this depressed mode and began humming a raucous off-color song. Marie, who knew the lyrics, got up, swept her skirts, and began to dance and sing along with him. And Sheffield, he turned the conies. So I got a few more pages to chapter 2. I'm going to stop it right here. Just about 6 more pages to chapter 2. And I'm going to stop it right here. See you next time.